Kicks 105.5 WKXH. Good morning, I'm JJ. It is Wednesday, July 27th at 7:51 and currently 60 degrees outside. We'll talk about the weather in just a little bit, but right now we have Mike Barrett from the Barrett Insurance Agency in the studio. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning.
How are we?
Not bad. How about yourself?
Oh, just living the dream.
See, I love saying that, right? People ask, hey, how's it going? Hey, I'm living the dream. Oh, it must be nice. I'm like, how do you know what kind of dream I'm living? I could be living a bad dream for all you know.
Could be a nightmare.
Could be a nightmare. So it gives me flexibility to choose, right? That's what I like about that. So
Absolutely.
So this morning for good policies, what I thought we'd talk about, and I hate to be the killer of summer, but kids are going to be going to school soon.
Yes. Oh, yes.
You know, at 47 years old, I still get bummed out when we have to go back to school. I'm like, but I never had summer. That doesn't make sense. But, you know, it's been great. But this morning specifically, what we're talking about is the kids that have graduated high school and are going to be off to college. All right. So going to be leaving mom and dad's house and going to college. Maybe going to college at Groovy UV. Maybe going to NVU. Maybe going to Dartmouth. God bless you. Going to be going to colleges anywhere across the country. How do they have insurance coverage is probably a great question to ask. So I thought, you know, kind of a high-level discussion on that may be good. So if you have a child going to college and they're going to be staying in a dorm, you know, you're going to probably find that your homeowner policy will still cover them because you may or may not know, but if you look at the definitions, which is an intriguing read for sure, of your insurance policy, a definition of insured is dependents, household members who are related. So your kids are insured under your homeowner policy, not for property, for the house or anything, because they don't own the house. That's you, but their personal property is going to be covered. Liability is going to be provided to them. That's pretty key stuff, right? So if they're going to be away at college, how do they have coverage? Well, the liability should still follow them because they're still a member of the household, and it's a temporary situation, not a permanent. They're right. They're not renting forever. They're just living in a dorm. So it's going to be called a temporary location. So they should have some coverage. They should have up to 10% of the personal property limit on your home that should extend to them at school. So if they have their personal belongings, let's say, let's use easy math. Let's say you have a maximum limit of up to $150,000 of personal property coverage on your homeowner policy. Up to 10% of that, aka $15,000, is going to be the maximum limit for their personal property away from home. So they are going to have some level of coverage. Now, there is a little bit of a difference if they go from living in the dormitory to renting off campus, right? Why is that? Well, that kind of goes beyond the temporary. You're not so temporary when you specifically are renting, right? So that can kind of, there's a gray area, and that kind of goes across it in my personal opinion. So at that point, you really are going to probably want to consider a renter's insurance policy for your child in their name, and it needs to be in the state in which they are going to school. So if they're going to New York or Minnesota or Michigan or wherever they're going, you should be reaching out and getting a renter's insurance policy that is in that state because every state has their own insurance laws. You need to have a policy that adheres to the state in which they're renting. So now when it comes to vehicles, some insurance companies do not like the idea of the kids taking the cars to school. Not such a big deal if they're going to school pretty close, right? So if they're going to, obviously, to Northern Vermont University, or if they're going to UVM or somewhere in Vermont or New Hampshire for that matter, a lot of the companies may be like, oh, that's okay if they're taking the car with them. They start going out of state much further, and it becomes a little bit of a gray area for the companies. They're not a big fan of it. Number of reasons why. You want to make sure you have adjusters who are able to handle it, and if you drove a car to California, they're going to have to look for an independent adjuster company. It muddies up the waters. So they really don't really care for that. So at that point, you may want to think of some other options or find a company that does accept that. But when it comes to the kids going to school, there are options. Think about computer coverage for the kids bringing the laptops to school. How can you protect them for loss to those? Whether it comes to dropping it on their way to class or spilling a beverage on it while they're studying at night. A lot of question marks that you should be, or questions you should be thinking of to try to find an answer to if you're worried about making sure they have optimal protection while away and furthering their education.
And, well, you mentioned some things there, and just sparked some stuff in my head.
Sure.
You said like spilling a beverage. Say fire.
Yeah.
Sets off all the sprinklers.
Yeah.
Your
water damage. Covered.
Computer.
Yep.
Laptop. All your textbooks. Clothes.
Yeah.
everything's ruined.
Yeah, you have coverage for that. Water damage would you'd be covered for the same perils of coverage for your personal property at the dorm at school that you would have at your home. So it's very broad. Some policies are comprehensive policies, like a Form 5, which I won't get into, but we can discuss that with your agent to get more information. But there are some limitations on the personal property, which is why maybe a Form 5 may be better than a Form 3. And maybe that's warranting a conversation maybe next week about some of the key differences there. But when it comes to specific coverage for computers, a regular homeowner policy on a Form 3, you spill something on your computer. Sadly, there's no coverage for it because there's no specific peril that says, oops, I spilled something on my computer. Whereas if you have a Form 5, there's no exclusion that says it won't be covered. And then if you specifically list it with a computer endorsement, you're getting more comprehensive coverage on it. Plus, you wouldn't be subject to the policy deductible. You might have a computer deductible of $100. So it's really about, because at this point, I could throw so much information out there that you go, blah, 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 right? I mean, I do that anyway. So it's important just to have that conversation if you're a parent who's concerned and wanting to make sure the children have proper coverage.
And what about the other question? Theft.
Theft is a covered peril as well.
If
so
someone goes into your dorm room and steals your laptop.
Steals your stuff, absolutely. Again, it's going to come back to the named perils that you have on your policy if you have a Form 3 or the open perils on a Form 5. And you're going to have the coverage, again, subject to that 10% cutoff of being away from the insured premises, which is mom and dad's home. But up to 10% of the coverage limit for coverage C, personal property, would extend to you. So there is some protection there.
So is it covers just computers, or say they have a fancy watch that their granddad gave them, and someone stole it?
Yeah, it's going to be covered. But here's the thing: you start talking about a fancy watch that granddad gave them, there's going to be some interpreted value there, or some other value beyond the fact that it's a watch, right? I mean, if it's a watch, they're going to go, well, there's a watch. If it's a watch that's got a tremendous amount of value, whether it be due to the age or something else, you may want to specifically insure that, just to buy up the coverage so that you're not limited to, hey, just get another watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I guess there's a difference between a Timex and a Rolex.
There may be a slight difference there. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if it's a Rolex, they would be looking to replace it with a Rolex. But again, if it's, the jewelry is the great example, right? I mean, you can go out and buy a ring for your spouse or for anyone, and diamond or what have you, and maybe you spent $1,500 on it. Next thing you know, get an appraisal and it's a $5,000 ring. So you know what I mean. So there could be some interpretive value. So you want to have some quantifications there to make sure that you're insuring it properly. And that itself could be another conversation.
Yep.
I could bore the bejeebers out of you for weeks to come.
For weeks to come. Okay, Mike. Okay, so it looks like we're running a little short here. Somebody wants to reach out to you and talk to you about any of this kind of stuff.
Just give us a call, 748-5224. Find us on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury, online, thebarrettagency.com, Google, Facebook, and YouTube. Just look for Barrett Insurance Agency.
Thanks, Mike, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Have a great week.
Just don't try to call.
I will not try to call. No coverage for that.
Kicks 105.5. That was Mike Barrett from the Barrett Insurance Agency with us this morning. We'll talk with him again next week. Good morning.